Diksha?
Yes, sir.
Professor Vivek Kumar is having some problem with link.
Okay.
So what to do? Let's start then. Okay.
Shall we start?
Huh.
So should I also introduce the chair a little bit, like talk about
Once
him?
he comes with chair, but now also introduce better.
I'll just give a brief introduction.
Yes.
Okay. So welcome all of you to this international e-conference titled Migration, Diasporas and Sustainable Development: Perspectives, Policies, Opportunities and Challenges. This is a 4-day conference, 2 to 5th November 2020, jointly organized by the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism, New Delhi, Migrant Forum in Asia, Manila, Philippines, Center for Research on North America, UNAM, Mexico. Currently, this is a parallel Room 3 conference going on, which is titled Perspectives on Migration and Diaspora. This is supposed to be chaired by Professor Vivek Kumar, who will join us very shortly. Uh, to give a very brief introduction about the chair, Professor Kumar is presently the chairperson at the Center for the Study of Social Systems, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is an Indian sociologist and a public intellectual. His publications include Caste and Democracy in India, Dalit Leadership in India, Bahujan Samaj Party, A Perspective from Below. He specializes in methodology in social sciences, Dalit studies, and he works on Indian diaspora. This session has very interesting papers, 9 in total, and I'll just talk very briefly about each one of them. We will be starting with Professor Bernardo Bolanos and Professor Camilla Tegao. Their paper is titled The Scarcity of Nobel Prizes in Latin America, a culturalist approach to the history of brain drain in the region. Second, Professor Camilla Tegao and Dr. Amba Pandey, The Making of the Canadian Dream, Tracking Indian IT Workers Moving Out of the United States. Third, Professor Anand Mahanand, An Immigrant's Journey Towards Excellence, a study of Kenneth R. Lala's autobiography, I Am a Dream for My Village, From India to Trinidad. Then we'll have Dr. Shobha Kumari, Diasporic Element in the Works of Jhumpa Lahiri with special reference to the namesake. Then we are going to have Mr. Satyanarayan Tiwari and Dr. Ajay K. Chaube, Mapping Colonial Stereotypes in Select Diasporic Novels of the New Millennium, a Critical Study. Then Mr. Jason Wallang, Armenian Diaspora and the Quest for Armenian Genocide Recognition. Sixth, Linking the Global World, Role of the Indian Diaspora on Global Culture, Ms. Satnam Kaur. Then we will have Abdul Hamid Sheikh, Diaspora and Regional Identity in the Era of Globalization. And finally, Bijender Singh and Susmita Prija, Mapping Migration and Cultural Crisis of Women, a study of fictional narratives. The rapporteur of this session will be Mr. Subhadeep Mukherjee. So, can we begin the session now, sir? With your permission.
You are chair now. Please start. And
Oh, I have to chair the session?
Yes.
Okay.
I am operating here. Otherwise, Professor Pandey can do. Dr. Pandey, support you.
Yeah.
No, Professor Vivek Kumar got struck with the link.
Yeah, I would.
Some problem. So one of you can do. It is okay. Either Professor Kamalia or Dr. Amba Pandey can do.
We will be presenting. So I will.
No.
Okay. Not an issue, ma'am.
That happens sometimes.
Not an issue, ma'am. I'll.
Diksha is doing a wonderful job. Continue.
Diksha, carry on.
Okay, ma'am.
You are quite doing well, so everybody appreciating. Carry on.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, sir. So let's.
Kumar came.
So can we now? Hello.
Yes, sir. We're eagerly waiting.
Right. Sir, thank you so much for joining.
Give introduction again.
Yeah, let me reintroduce Professor Vivek Kumar, who has joined us. He's the chair for today's parallel session. He's presently the chairperson at the Center for the Study of Social Systems, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is an Indian sociologist and a public intellectual. His publications include Caste and Democracy in India, A Perspective Below, Dalit Leadership in India, India's Roaring Revolution, Bahujan Samaj Party, A Perspective from Below. His specializations include methodology of social sciences, Dalit studies, sociology of South Asia, and he works on Indian diaspora. Sir, this session will be seeing 9 very interesting papers. I have already introduced the names and titles of this paper. I give it over to you now for the rest of the session, sir.
Okay, I'm extremely sorry because I know that this is an international program and usually we are supposed to be in time, and time is so precious in this traumatic condition. Pandemic is on world over, but very interesting international event. US elections are on, and I was really caught into that. So that's why, my login and password, my daughter helped me out in launching me here. So nice at this JRFDT Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism. It is very interesting, and I think you have begun yesterday. So without taking much time, there is nothing to say from my side. I'll listen first the papers, and then in between, if I have to make some comment, definitely I will come in. So now I invite, do I have to invite the papers, or I think the moderator is there?
Okay, sir.
Hello?
Yes. So
yeah, Diksha.
Yes.
Diksha is the.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Diksha, so much. Yeah,
sure,
please.
Sir. So can we have the first paper, Professor Bernardo Bolanos and Professor Camilla, The Scarcity of Nobel Prizes in Latin America, a Culturalist Approach to the History of Brain Drain in the Region. Over to you, presenters.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We will present this paper on the scarcity of Nobel Prizes in Latin America, a culturalist approach to the history of brain drain in the region. Well, this talk deals with 2 dimensions of brain drain studies, not the classical one that analyzes recent figures and debates, but the empirical one based on the life histories of 5 outstanding Latin American scientists. We refer to the testimonies of 3 Latin American scientists who won Nobel Prizes and 2 Latin American mathematicians. Only 2 of these 5 pursued their scientific careers in their native countries. The end result is a reflection on the endogenous and cultural causes of brain drain, such as corruption, insufficient commitment to hard sciences in Latin America, lack of adequate resources, local political upheaval, and the region's economic dependency. Latin America is one of the regions most affected by the loss of its academics, and highly educated personnel surpass only by Africa and Eastern Europe. Case 1, Dr. Bernardo Alberto José. In 1947, the Argentinian physician Bernardo Alberto José received the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine for his discovery of the role played by pituitary hormones in regulating the amount of blood sugar in animals. José was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1887. He became the first Latin American to win a Nobel Prize in the sciences. José often said that his career was a result of his own personal efforts and strictly based on merit. José pursued his entire scientific career in Argentina. However, he believed in the absolute necessity of scholarships for study abroad. José claimed that scholarships should last only 1 or 2 years in order to prevent brain drain. Like many other scientists in Latin America, José suffered the consequences of political upheaval. In 1943, the military dictatorship disposed him of his university position, but instead of going into exile, he chose to re-establish at the privately founded Institute of Biology. In 1955, dictator Juan Domingo Perón was removed from power and José returned to his laboratory at the University of Buenos Aires. In 1957, he was appointed director of the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, where he contributed to the design of public policies for scientific development. In 1966, José complained that Argentina, which once exported grain and meat, had become a world power in sending scientists and technicians abroad. Now we will talk about Dr. Cesar Milstein. Like José, Milstein received his undergraduate and first graduate degree at the University of Buenos Aires. However, he left Argentina in 1958 with a fellowship from the British Council. Milstein joined the biochemistry department at Cambridge and initiated a second PhD. In 1984, he received the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine. In his autobiography, Milstein acknowledged that Argentinian research institutions prepared him very well academically, but did not provide enough economic support. After earning his second doctorate at Cambridge, Milstein returned to Argentina as head of the Division of Molecular Biology. He could only stay for 1 year and had to return to England after a military coup d'etat in 1962. Undoubtedly, one of the most important causes of brain drain in Latin America has been the political situation in the region, jeopardized by the lack of democracy and peace. Argentine scientists who emigrated during the 60s and 70s did so to escape the violence of the military regimes. I will pass very quickly the case of Leloir, Luis Federico Leloir. He had precarious conditions for doing science. Instead, we will focus on Mario Molina. Mario Molina is the only Mexican citizen to win a Nobel Prize for hard sciences. He actually contributed to elucidating the threat of the Earth ozone layer from chlorofluorocarbon gases. Molina earned a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering at the National Autonomous University, UNAM. Then he got a postgraduate degree from the University of Freiburg and a doctoral degree in chemistry from Berkeley. 2 years later, he and Sherwood Rowland highlighted the threat of fluorocarbon gases to the ozone layer. This led to the worldwide elimination of those gases from aerosol cans and refrigerators, and to the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1995. He recalls in his autobiography, in 1960s, I quote, I enrolled in the chemical engineering program at UNAM, as this was the closest way to become a physical chemist, taking math-oriented courses not available to chemistry majors. End of quote. Mexico and Argentina have had different political histories during the 20th century, marked by an official ruling party in one case and several military coups in the other. However, Molina's case may also be interpreted to exemplify the relationship between chronic political instability in Latin America and the lack of development of basic science. During the independence period, Creole elites, which had considered science as a path to prestige and development, turned toward the more pressing problems of building national states with efficient civil services and military viability. No Latin American has ever won a Nobel Prize in physics. The prestigious Nobel Prize or the Field Medal in mathematics. However, in 1989, the Argentinian Alberto Calderón received the prestigious Wolf Prize in mathematics for his studies on singular integral operators. Calderón is widely considered as one of the 20th century's most important and probably Latin America's most noted mathematician of all time. He was born in Mendoza and graduated in civil engineering from the University of Buenos Aires. Calderón earned a PhD in mathematics from the University of Chicago. Calderón is an excellent example of an Argentinian trained brain because he pursued his career in the United States. Aside from brief periods in which he came back to Argentina, he held academic positions at Ohio State University and Princeton and the MIT. When Alberto Calderón entered the university in Argentina, there were only small schools of mathematics in Buenos Aires and La Plata. However, he preferred to study civil engineer due to the precarious chances of earning a living as a mathematician at the time. He later worked as an assistant to Polish mathematician Anthony Sigmund, who taught a course in Argentina. The cases of Molina and Calderón illustrate the absence of a sufficiently robust institutional framework for the advanced study of mathematics in Latin America during the 20th century. Now we go to the conclusions. Brain drain as a theoretical and ideological concept does not allow a neutral empirical analysis and may not even support a neutral scientific approach. In the 60s, studies of this phenomenon began considering it as a catastrophic for descending countries. On the contrary, the new perspectives of brain drain in the 90s emphasize its supposed positive effects, such as remittances and the organization of the scientific diaspora to promote scientific collaboration and technology transfer. Another alleged positive impact of highly skilled migration is that it increases educational and cultural capital in sending countries. However, a third generation of studies on brain drain adopts new pessimistic views, such as the ones alleged in this talk. Through this talk, we saw historical heterogeneity in the causes for the migration of Latin American scientists, the existence of dictatorships and civil wars in the countries of origin. And so brain drain in Latin America has been a response to economic, political, and cultural factors. Specifically, the decision to migrate has been historically motivated by political violence, corruption, lack of infrastructure, and inadequate cultivation of certain disciplines such as advanced mathematics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Bernardo, for this very, very good presentation. Moving on to the second presentation, Professor, I would now like to invite Professor Camelia and Dr. Amba Pandey. They'll be presenting their paper, The Making of the Canadian Dream, Tracking Indian IT Workers Moving Out of the United States. Over to you, Professor Camelia and Dr. Amba Pandey.
Thank you, Diksha. Good evening, Professor Kumar. It is really a pleasure for us to be able to present our paper in this session. Actually, this paper we have written together, me and Camelia, and you can say it is an extension of our previous paper, which is already under publication, which is the brain rejection by the Trump regime. And its impact on the Indian and Mexican skilled diaspora. But in this paper, what we are trying to do is that we will be making a short PowerPoint. So let me share my screen first. Yeah. Can you see?
Not exactly right now.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's okay. Yes.
Okay. So basically, let me in the beginning, Camelia insisted that I should present this paper. So basically, in the beginning, I will give a brief overview of what we are trying to do to say in this paper. So the United States has been traditionally considered as the most attractive destination for highly skilled IT professionals from India. But of late, Canada is offering an alluring alternative. Unlike the H-1B program, in the United States, the history of which can be traced back to World War II, Canada only implemented the Global Skills Strategy, that is GSS, in 2017. The GSS offers fast-track work permits for foreign skilled workers in a shorter time than its southern neighbor. Apart from this, the Canadian multiculturalism seems to be a protective gear against the anti-immigrant racialized populism that have engulfed several other countries. So the larger opinion among the skilled migrants continue to favor migration to Canada, especially in cosmopolitan cities such as Toronto. Canada has been particularly benefited because of Donald Trump's restrictive policies by projecting itself as with an image of a cosmopolitan society accessible to professionals from around the world. As a result, Canada has become an alternative destination for those Indian workers who have difficulties in renewing their visas in the United States. They feel uncomfortable with the anti-immigrant discourse in the US, but at the same time, not many wish to return to India. This paper compares the policies of talent attraction in the United States and Canada, verifying the older theory on competitive migration regimes by Sachar, 2006, according to which main countries of destinations for skilled migration try to imitate and even surpass the other in their policies for recruiting skilled workers. Our methodology is based on the analysis of the most representative case study of the platform Move North, founded in 2017 by an Indian engineer, Vikram Ranganekar, who moved from US to Canada. His decision to do so was based on the need to improve his migration status and also for a friendlier environment for an IT startup. We use the techniques of communication studies such as discourse and content analysis to show the snowball effect caused by the migration of single individual who afterwards started a movement to encourage significant number of Indian engineers to migrate to Canada. So I will basically, so this was a short, just a minute, this was a short intro to our paper. So the contents of the presentation is like that, in the beginning, we have discussed a theoretical background of the brain attraction, and then we have tried to see competitive advantage of the Canadian immigration policies. Then we discuss the Indians in United States and Canada. And then we come to skilled trans migrants from the United States to Canada with a special focus on movenorth.com case. But in my presentation, I will skip some of these points, Indian in United States and Canada, basically, So in this, in our theoretical background, as I already said, that we discussed this theory by Sachar of the competitive migration regimes, So he propounded this theory in 2006, in which public policies on skilled migration are inspired by the strategies of other countries, such as the point system or the facilities to obtain residency and citizenship. At that time, various scholars analyzed the start of a global competition for talent hunt. This situation led to an interjurisdictional influence and consequently to migration policies becoming more and more similar around the world. It also highlighted that migration is not only depend on the domestic conditions of the sending countries. It also became a part of a global competition because all the countries were trying to attract talent from all over the world. The mutual causation of immigration policies theorized by Satcher is still valid today, not only in context of receiving foreign workers, but also in context of restricting their entry into countries that impacted the traditional destination of skilled migration, which is US, UK, and Australia. As a consequence of this populist boom, most of the large countries receiving migration have come to question the traditional paradigms of brain drain and reverse technology transfer. The demographic, economic, and political trends of the 21st century have shown a return of protectionism on domestic labor markets, which implies a careful restrictions on migrants to respond to a new stage of world economy, that of sustainable capitalism. However, Canada is an exception to this global order, since the country continues to promote migration and new arrivals of workers, especially of the skilled workers. The literature on remigration explains this particular process in which migrants change countries from the second to the third time in their lives. The remigration of professionals, social actors, and more capacity of migration agencies and mobility than low-skilled workers respond to the fluidity of labor markets in globalization. Skilled migrations from United States to Canada is not necessarily a forced migration process, but rather an act of selection that privileges professionals in the process of relocating when they are not satisfied with the conditions of migration, their immigration status, and the prospect of settling down in United States. So this was our theoretical base. Now the competitive advantage of Canadian immigration policies and its spillover effect. In this section, we compare both the policies of Canada and United States, in which Canada has actually succeeded in attracting more highly skilled migrants in the present context. You can very well see here that there is a comparison between H-1B visa and GSS, in which there is work permit for spouses. Canada says yes. And this is one of the major problems that we found out that has in context of US, that spouses are not getting permission to work, which Canada is providing, which means that Canada is encouraging family migration. And in selection criteria also, application fee, processing time, everywhere Canada has reported a more friendly migration policy. So now we come to this case of Indian techies migrating from Canada from US to Canada. So according to one of the studies by Bhattacharya in 2019 in Quartz, India, talks about how the Canadian dream is replacing the American dream. And this could be true at least as far as Indian workers and Canadian immigration policy is concerned. According to Bhattacharya, more than half of the American employers consider Canada's immigration policy to be more favorable than the EU. So they plan to expand their business in Canada. For example, according to a survey by Chicago-based Envoy Global, a fifth of the American employers already had an office in Canada, while 38% were considering expanding their business in Canada. Some companies were increasing their presence in India by sending employers and recruiting more human capital. So here we see one more thing, that Canada actually has emerged as a competitor to India in attracting the Indian talent, because there is a lot of media coverage in India about how the migrants are returning back, the brain gain for India. Here we see that they are also migrating, diverting towards Canada instead of coming back to India. In this slide, in the next slide, we again discuss coverage, which these migrations of highly skilled from US to Canada is getting in Indian media. It says that Silicon Valley North, with strong backing and investment from the Canadian government, Toronto has been dubbed one of the fastest growing tech hubs in the North America. 6th of annual paid vacation, 7th for average rent prices. Best feature, time to start a business, 2 days. So these are some of the offers that Canada is providing towards the highly skilled Indians. So here I will leave this section, and now I come to this case. We come to this case again of Vikram Ranganekar. He actually, in 2017, he was not getting the opportunity to start his own startup in US. So he decided to migrate to Canada. He actually started a web page called Move North that actually encouraged lot of US professionals to migrate to Canada. Actually, it became kind of a wave to migrate to Canada, and that started through this website called the portal called the Move North, and it received a lot of coverage from in CNN, in BBC, in Bloomberg, and several other Canadian newspapers. And the kind of reception Vikram Ranganekar got was amazing, was phenomenal, and that actually led to many US professionals leave for Canada. So in this our analysis, we have tried to base our analysis on these 4 points. First is what happens. It actually covers Ranganekar's story as to what happened, what difficulties he was finding in US, and they also actually, it was a fictional kind of a narrative. So that created lot of the readers found it very interesting to read. And then it comes what entertains. So what it is said in order to keep the audience connected, not to get bored. So they also took this into account that even if others are narrating their stories should be very interesting so that it can attract more professionals. Then the third point is what sells, aimed at transforming information into merchandise, public diplomacy of Toronto, Canada, as a safe place and good destination. So all these sections in the portal contain the stories of great people, professionals, but in a very, very interesting way. It was presented in a very, very interesting way. So, and in the end, actually, they tried to say that what actually connects in Canada, in which the multiculturalism policy and all that were also discussed. So this is how we have developed our paper. It is still developing. In the end, we have also discussed about the difficulties that these professionals are finding in integrating into Canadian market, professional market, the job market, and there are some difficulties. There is no doubt about it. But still, Canada is emerging as a major destination for the Indian skilled professionals. So to conclude, I would just like to say that the recent arrival of skilled immigrants has benefited the Canadian economy, especially in areas such as technology, real estate, and tourism. Its friendly immigration policies and the relative facilities of obtaining a working visa can be considered as a competitive advantage that facilitates the spillover effect of skilled remigration from United States to Canada. The case of MoveNorth.com company shows that hospitality towards foreigners in Canada offers a good counterbalance to anti-immigrant discourses and discrimination policies towards foreigners in the United States. This is also part of a broader positioning of Canada as a friendly country to immigration, an image that does not always correspond to reality when it comes to labor integration of foreigners and isolation of situations of discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amba and Camelia. Great. So we are now from sociology to policy. Great. Yeah, the third presenter.
Yeah, can we have now the third presentation, Professor Anand Mahanand, An Immigrant's Journey Towards Excellence, a study of Kenneth R. Lala's autobiography, I Am a Dream for My Village, From India to Trinidad. Over to you, Professor Anand.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity and respected chair and my co-participants. The title of my presentation is An Immigrant's Journey Towards Excellence, a study of Kenneth R. Lala's autobiography, I Am a Dream for My Village, From India to Trinidad. Migration is a central part of human life. People migrate from one place to another for different reasons. We can trace instances of migration since time immemorial. People migrate voluntarily or forcefully. There are instances of mass migration and also individual migration. The mass migration laborers in the mass migration of laborers in the 19th century is a significant aspect of history of India. After the abolition of slavery in the US, indentured laborers were transported from India to work in plantations in Trinidad, Mauritius, and other countries, as they were cheaply available. These plantations were primarily owned by Europeans who were very powerful. Such migrants gained experience of two places, one of the ancestral land and the other of the adopted land. These experiences are related to shifted identities, transnational conditions, and transformed socioeconomic situations. Many writers have captured these experiences through different forms, including fiction, poems, autobiography, personal memories, and so on. Thus, we have a rich resource of such narratives. The works of V.S. Naipaul is certainly monumental. There are also other writers like A.N.R. Robinson and Kenneth R. Lala, who lived in Trinidad and Tobago and wrote about the struggle and tribulation of life. In this paper, I would like to study the celebrated work of Kenneth R. Lala titled I Am a Dream for My Village. The book embodies the life journey of the writer as to how he moved from a farmer's son to a barrister and a parliamentarian. Many argue that people with a humble background rise to higher positions due to the support they receive from the state or society in the adopted country. I would like to argue that it is the family and the diligence of the individual that contribute to such an upward mobility. To prove this point, I will be studying Dr. Lala's personal memory inscribed in his book, I Am a Dream to My Village. I'll also juxtapose a few other autobiographical works with this in the process of my discussion. Kenneth K. Lala's forefather had migrated to Trinidad from Darbhanga in India. Kenneth was born on 20th October 1926 in Trinidad. His childhood name was Ramsanta. His father, Balbhadra Singh, was a laborer in the plantation. His parents were separated. He had a younger brother and a sister. His house was made of mud. As he says, quote, it was a mud hut with a thatched roof. The house had one door and one small window. It was not a congenial house, unquote. It did not have electricity or running water. His father used bottle and wicks and made kerosene lamp. His father worked as a plantation laborer. Since his mother had left her husband for another man, Kenneth's father had to take care of his children himself. He cooked food and left for the cane field in the morning and came back in the evening. He describes his father as a quote, simple, down to earth man, religious and disciplined, with high moral values. He was well respected and esteemed by his villagers. Unquote. Kenneth knew from his childhood that his mother left his father because of the disparity in education between her and her husband. He was also aware of the fact that his father was desperate to improve his situation by giving them good education. Kenneth states, quote, my father believed in education and moral and spiritual values. And so at night before my two siblings and retired, he would teach us bhajans and tell us stories with, with high moral values until we fell asleep. These moral values and educations inspired and shaped the character of Kenneth a great deal. These resources became part of his personality. Not only this, his teachings also helped him shape as an honest person. He used to teach them jhut na bolbe or don't tell lies, chori na karbe, don't steal, ladai na karbe, don't fight, jhagda na karbe, do not become embroiled in quarrel. He also instilled in his children the virtue of not using harsh or insulting language to others. His father always told them that a silent tongue is always better than one that uses harsh words. The Hindi idiom goes like this. ई मुंह से दूध और भात खाइबे, ई मुंह से लात खाइबे. With courteous and expressions emanating from one's mouth, one may be able to eat milk and rice. With this mouth, you may also invite cakes. Kenneth says, quote, although I was not able to appreciate the gravity and significance of those teachings during my childhood, they were so much internalized into my system that I was able to understand and appreciate their intrinsic values and implications with the passage of time, unquote. These qualities help him in overcoming many problems in his life and also in facing challenges of many kinds. He knew to prepare dinner from an early age to feed the family. As a member of the family, he has been understanding, responsible, and duty bound, but not impulsive and casual. The family bond, which has been a unique feature of Indian culture, has contributed to his character at the later stage too. His father had told him not to fear because his spirit would be with him to protect him and guide him. Kenneth remembers that when he has no job and is desperate to get one, he goes to meet the owner of the welding workshop. He meets Mr. Macaulay and requests him for a job. Because he grows up as an honest person, he is taken up by her aunt Jane to be with her. She is instrumental in shaping his career. She helps him to get education that leads him towards his uplift. The qualities of being duty bound and sincerity he had learned from his father at home also made him a sincere student who would do all his tasks and obey his teacher sincerely. The zeal to attain higher level of education, though he came from the morass of illiteracy, took him further. Kenneth was also deeply influenced by Abraham Lincoln. He performed the play based on Abraham Lincoln several times. Lincoln's philosophy to move ahead in life amidst struggle and difficulties had a significant impact on his life. Lincoln's deep sense of commitment and service towards humanity also shaped his character. When he comes to power in politics and hold higher position, he devoted his time for many humanitarian activities. Before getting a job in civil services, he had to struggle to get the humble job of a teacher. He was not able to secure it for him, but he was never disappointed. When sorry, he kept on applying for posts and went on meeting people and facing interviews. When alone, he remembered what his father had advised. When he was in a lonely house, he recited the mantra his father had given. Never fear where alone. Always recite your mantra and invoke the presence of Lord Rama and Hanuman. He did not react in an impulsive manner when his uncle did not pay the money due to him. His uncle had spent it on wedding of a relative. Kenneth needed that money to give his mother a decent burial. When his brother Kanta won the election and was to attend an inaugural meeting, he helped him buying a suit and attend the meeting in a dignified manner. Kanta did not pay the money spent on his election. He felt cheated, but Kenneth did not say anything to him. When he is back to Trinidad after completing his studies in England, he did not receive adequate support. He was a bit disheartened, as he says, quote, I felt lonely and abandoned, but yet my but yet determined to move forward with fortitude and optimism, unquote. He is grateful to God for elevating him to the position of a barrister. When he lost a case, he was not disappointed, but full of courage and determination to go ahead. His skill and caliber was recognized and appreciated by all. He was offered a practice by a judge when the latter elevated to a judge position. Even in the delivering justice, he was just and honest. He was a member of the Queen's Council and advisor to the Prime Minister, but was always humble and honest. Conclusion. I have gone through other biographical narratives, including that of V.S. Naipaul, but this one is more touching and inspiring for me. I read this book, and perhaps this is why the National Book Trust has published this book. I read this book as an inspiring piece of writing for young generation. It is a fascinating life of a person who rose from a humble background to a very high position, mainly through moral values and spirit imbibed from home and one's culture and not benefited out of someone's mercy. The following lines state his philosophy. Quote, looking into retrospect, I have had a happy and blissful family life in which there has been no greed, hate, or bigotry except a peaceful coexistence full of affection and respect for each other as well as for others. Unquote. The values and morals learned at home help him excel in life and become a great personality. Many will emulate this personality as their hero. Thank you.
Great, Bharan. Thank you so much. It's a story, of course, the two papers which were presented earlier, uh, they were some story from the uh, different collectivity they were moving and share individual biography. So I think we have different paradigm, and that's the beauty of the presentations which have been lined by the organizers. Thank you so much. I think we move on to the next paper. Huh?
Yeah, moving to the next presentation. This is by Dr. Shobha Kumari, diasporic element in the works of Jhumpa Lahiri with special reference to the namesake. Over to you, Dr. Shobha.
Oh,
இது தெரியல.
Do we have
why
Dr.
Mahalingam is there?
Yes.
Mahalingam is there? Why you are appearing on your name is appearing on the screen?
Sir, yes, I'm there. Hello, I'm there.
I know that. I think there is a different presenter, na? Presenter.
Yeah.
Some presenter is there.
Kumari? Do we have Dr. Shobha Kumari here, the presenter? So I don't see her name here. So should we move to the next?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
moving to the next, can we now have Mr. Satyanarayan Tiwari and Dr. Ajay K. Chaube mapping colonial stereotypes in select diasporic novels of the new millennium, a critical study. Over to you, presenters.
Can you repeat the title again, please, for me?
Yeah, mapping colonial stereotypes. Yes, I'm just doing that. Mapping colonial stereotypes in select diasporic novels of the new millennium, a critical study.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Satyanarayan Tiwari and Dr. Ajay K. Chaube.
Yes, Mr. Satyanarayan will present.
Okay.
We cannot hear you.
Do we have Mr.
Satya, are you there?
Satyanarayan.
Sir, he's there.
Satya, are you there? Satyanarayan?
Can you unmute? Actually, he is mute now.
Yes, sir. I'm Ajay K. Chaube. Sir, I'm Ajay.
Ajay, ask him to unmute.
Please unmute.
Yes. Please.
Yeah.
Mr. Tiwari, please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Mr. Tiwari, you have a unmute button on the left side of your screen.
Yes, Satyanarayan.
Satyanarayan Tiwari, you have to unmute yourself first. We can't hear you. There is a mute button on the left side of your screen. Bottom left, if you can see.
Can we go to next presenter so that he can?
Okay, sir, sure. So, moving to the next presenter, we have Mr. Jason Wolang, Armenian Diaspora and the Quest for Armenian Genocide Recognition. Over to you, Mr. Jason Wolang.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I start?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to start off by thanking the chair and the organizers for letting me to present in the seminar. My topic is on the Armenian diaspora and the recognition for Armenian genocide recognition. My paper focuses on 4 major diasporas of the Armenian descent: American Armenians, Russian Armenians, Indian Armenians, and the French Armenians. Given the division, given that America, Russia, and France have the three largest Armenian diaspora populations, and of course, because India being part of India, I wanted to focus a bit on India as well. My paper is divided first on what the Armenian genocide talks about, what are the Armenian diaspora, and then it goes to the 4 different bases of the 4 different diasporas: the American, the Russian, Indian, and then the French. So until a few decades ago, the debates and discussions on diaspora has been quite limited to the Jewish discussions. It is only after when we come towards the emergence of the globalized world and the help of enhanced global connectivity, there's been a major change in the debates and discussions of diaspora. There's more of a sort of a political engagement. Political engagement being that it has shaped the idea of the homeland, both the real and the imagined, as part and parcel of everyday politics around the world. And of course, with the help of the enhanced global connectivity, there's an increase in the diasporic engagement that cross over state borders. Of course, before diverging into the main topic at hand, I would like to first discuss on what the Armenian genocide actually means. The Armenian genocide is one of the most painful memories of the Armenian people, given that they had suffered the genocide under the Ottoman Empire rule. Some of the scholars trace back the genocide to the 1894-1896 Hamidian massacres, which led to the killing of 80,000 to 300,000 Armenians under the leadership of Sultan Abdul Hamid II. One of the dates which has engraved in the minds of the Armenians has been the 24th April 1915, which under the leadership of the Committee of Union and Progress decided on the genocide of the Armenians, with the party deciding on the deportation and killing of the Armenians, starting with the Armenian intellectuals. One of the most important notes to be discussed or to be noticed on the Armenian genocide is that it is one of the forgotten genocides of the present day world. Why I call it a forgotten genocide is because the Armenians, including the Armenian homeland as well as the diaspora, has been striving for more than 100 years for its recognition. And given that Turkey, which is considered the successor state of the Ottoman Empire, has refused to recognize the genocide, it has also impacted a lot of the sentiments of the Armenians. Despite the recognition of the genocidal character of the massacres of the Armenians in scholarship, civil society, and over 30 countries, some governments have been restrained to officially acknowledge the massacres as genocide because of real politics. Of course, the recognition of the genocide is one of the biggest connecting bridges between the Armenian diaspora and the Armenian homeland. And there has been open involvement of the diaspora in the recognition process, particularly in Russia and in the United States. And of course, the Armenian genocide has shaped the whole identity of the Armenians, be it all over the world. It's an essential part of the Armenians, regardless of any generation that exists, either the ones of the generation who has suffered during the genocide or the present generation of Armenians. Now I will go into the idea of what the Armenian diaspora is. The Armenian diaspora refers to the Armenians across the world outside the Armenian homeland. The term diaspora in Armenia is referred to as Spuyurok. And given that Armenia is one of the oldest countries in the world, the Armenian diaspora is also as old as in time immemorial and has impacted on various annals of history. One of the most important thing about the Armenian diaspora is that it is a diaspora. It is in the Armenian genes to travel and migrate. One of the first ever expansion of Armenians led to the establishment of Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia. The Middle Ages can be considered as marked as the first organized forms of Armenian diaspora, with many Armenians belonging to the trader class moving all across the world, including India. Of course, over the years, the main reason for the Armenian diaspora to develop was for the trade. And then after, of course, and then after the genocide in 1915, just before I mention that, I will go back to the. There was an estimate of 2.5 million Armenians who was living in the traditional Armenian homeland, partitioned between Russia, Persia, and the Ottoman Empire in the year 1914, when the genocide occurs. Another 2.5 million were lived in the interstate diaspora within the empires of Istanbul, Izmir, Tiflis, Tabriz, and Isfahan, and 200,000 of them were the remainder were the diaspora. After the genocide, there's been a drastic change in the diaspora, both in the number and the nature. The diaspora always diverse, though the diaspora was always diverse, became more radically dispersed and attained a great sense of fragile permanence. Despite having a strong active colonies abroad, the formation of the diaspora or the diasporization of the Armenian nation came after the genocide of 1915. Thus leading to most of the diaspora scholars looking to the Armenian diaspora as a victim diaspora having similar circumstances to the Jewish diaspora. Now, by 1921, 150,000 Armenians had left the post-genocide Turkey, approximately 500,000 refugees settled in the diaspora, and a little over 1 million lived in the newly formed Soviet Armenia, and about half a million in other parts of the Soviet Union. The Armenian diaspora, when it comes to is one of the most active diaspora in the international arena, and has been openly involved in preserving the memory of the genocide, Armenian genocide. It is one of the major pillars for genocide recognition across the world. According to data of the United Nations, there are about 3 million residing in the territory of Armenia in 2019. In recent times, the Armenian community in Russia are approximately of 2.25 million. The USA has about 1.5 approximately, and France has about 450,000 Armenians as well, approximately, of course. Now I will go towards the American Armenian diaspora. With a strong Armenian population in the United States, there's a lot of influence in the social, political, and cultural aspects of the country. Many Armenians have become part of the political structure with many, of course, Armenians being part of the Senate as well, Armenian origin Americans. The presence of the Armenian Americans in the social and cultural sphere further shows the influence of the community in the American sphere. When we look into the historical background of the Armenian Americans, the first recorded visit of an Armenian to the United States can be traced to 1618, when an Iranian of Armenian descent came to the United States with the purpose of selling tobacco. Later, some other Armenians were invited to create a colony for assistance. Eventually, over time, the Armenians came to him to America in the search of education and for trading purposes. It was only after the Hamidian massacres, which led to the loss of many Armenians, that many Armenians fled to America for their own protection. And after that, of course, the most major reason for why Armenians fled to America was the Armenian genocide, where the Armenian genocide was one of the main reasons for Armenians leaving the homeland and migrating to the United States. Before the mass migration during the genocide, there were only about 1,500 to 3,000 Americans in the United States. According to data estimates, there were about 77,890 Armenians living in the United States by 1919, most of them coming during the genocide. And then, of course, one of the greatest tragedies of the Armenian genocide, apart from the loss of life and the disruption of Armenian history, was the disruption of the Armenian history, with almost half of the Armenian intelligentsia being wiped out, with the main target of the Union of Committee of Union of the Committee of Union and Progress was wiping out of the Armenian intelligentsia. The survivor generation took years to revive the intelligentsia, and generation also turned inward in order to preserve any left Armenianness and Armenian culture. Most of them. This is, of course, the view of this is the situation of not only American Armenians, but of course the Russian, the Indians, or any other Armenian per se who had been living in the diaspora. After the Armenian genocide, the second major wave of immigration came after the formation of the Soviet Armenia and the Soviet Union, and after the Second World War. Most of the Armenians were involved in this migration were ancestors who were part of the first wave of diaspora. In 1974, roughly 60,000 Armenians from Soviet Armenia fled to the United States. The third wave of Armenians was linked to the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is actually happening right now. Another part of the conflict is happening right now in present-day Nagorno-Karabakh. The Nagorno-Karabakh and the Sumgate massacre of 1988 was one of which most of the Armenians see as an extension of the Armenian genocide of 1915. Is one of the reasons why many Armenians fled to the United States. Now, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the establishment of the Armenian Republic under the leadership of Levon Petrosyan, many Armenians still existed, wanted to create a good relation between the American Armenians and, of course, the Armenians in the Armenian homeland. They have a strong connection. Of course, the American Armenians have a strong connection with the homeland, and they have, of course, have been very active when it comes to for the fight for the recognition of the Armenian genocide. Many steps have been taken by the American Armenians for the recognition of the Armenian genocide by the American federal government. Of course, there have been about 4 to 5 resolutions as well. One of the most major resolutions is the Joint Resolution 148 in 1975 which led to the House of Representatives to recognize the genocide. Another resolution in 1984, a Joint Resolution 247, as well as with regard to Armenian genocide to designate the date of 24th April as the date of commemoration of the genocide, or the National Day of Remembrance of Man Inhumanity to Man. Then, of course, President Ronald Reagan also had described the incidents of 1950 as genocide, when he discussed about the Holocaust. Another important step was during the campaign trial of then President Barack Obama, who mentioned that he was ready to promise to recognize the Armenian genocide, but of course he refused to when he became president because of the whole concept of real politics. Though he has never been officially passed, it was recognized by 49 to 50 states in the United States. It was only in 2019 when the US House of Representatives passed a resolution with a vote of 405 to 11, making it the first time a Chamber of Commerce to officially recognize the Armenian genocide. Now, it is only not the resolutions which have been taken up with the help of the various Armenian diaspora, which has led to the Armenian genocide recognition. Other concepts have been established on memorials. There are many memorials across the United States. With the presence of 60 genocide memorials across the United States, the memorials range from plaques to side crosses, stones, popularly known as khachkars, to monumental sculptures and entire edifices placed in Armenian churchyards and public places. Now, the biggest influence when it comes to for the fight for Armenian recognition, genocide recognition in America has been the institute, organizations, and different individuals. There have been 4 major institutions which have played a role when it comes to the fight. Because we all know institutions and organizations play an important role when it comes to preserving the memory of the past, ranging from museum, institute, various organizations established for the cause. You can one of the best examples is Yad Vashem, which is a Holocaust Memorial Museum, or the Partition Museum in India, in Amritsar. So one of the major institutes organizations is the Armenian National Committee of America, which was popularly known as ANCA, ANCA. The ANC is the largest and most influential American Armenian grassroots political organization. It has a network of offices, chapters, and supporters throughout the US, and main concerns to address the issues of the Armenian community. One of the main issues is the recognition of the genocide. It is one of the most important priority and when it comes to Armenian genocide, the most important priority has been the recognition of the genocide and the leverage that the near unanimous United States Congress resolution of 2019. ANCA believes that with the American recognition, it would push Turkey to abandon its denials and accept its responsibility and engage with Armenia and the Armenian stakeholders. ANCA has also taken various initiatives with regard to American genocide, including the blocking of genocide denier Dick Holland, appointed as Armenian ambassador. Other initiatives have been with various organizations in media, academics, as entertainment to educate established facts on the Armenian genocide. Another important organization is the American Assembly of Armenia. Armenian Assembly of America. It is one of the largest non-partisan Armenian American advocacy organizations. Since its establishment, the main objective of it is to promote awareness to public issues which are Armenian, ensure the strengthening of the United States, Armenia, and assistance to humanitarian issues in Armenia. When it comes to the topic of recognition of the genocide, its main aim is to expand the organization's research, education, advocacy campaign for universal affirmation to the Armenian genocide and secure diaspora-wide consensus for the government of Armenia to deal with the consequences of genocide, this crime against humanity. Another organization is the American General Benevolent Union. which is one of the oldest organizations when it comes to the genocide recognition. It was established in 1906. It started out with the main purpose was of the AGBU was to protect the survivors of the Armenian genocide. It is present one of the largest organizations come to upholding the Armenian heritage to culture, education, humanitarian programs. When it comes to recognition, AGBU donates computers, scanners, printers, and various important research tools to Armenian Genocide Museum, with its aim to further research and education about the genocide. Another important is the institute, the Armenian National Institute. One of the most important when it comes to recognition of the Armenian genocide, the ANI, with the help of various educators, scholars, and journalists, and through conferences, publication, and document projects, and institutional materials, aim to help the recognition of the Armenian genocide as well as prevent future genocides. It is located in Washington, D.C. And now I would then we go to focus not only of course, apart from the organizations, institutions, and the memorials. Another aspect of the fight for the recognition of the Armenian genocide by the diaspora has been the work of individuals, whether it's political, social, or cultural fields. It was once said that the Armenian Americans community was described as the most influential Armenian community in the world, even though it was not the largest Armenian community in the world. The Armenian American lobby, according to former National Security Advisor Brzezinski, is one of the most influential foreign ethnic lobbies in the United States. With the presence of Armenian politicians in the Senate, House, and the Representatives, the main aim of the lobby was to ensure the government to take serious steps into the recognition of the Armenian genocide. When we come to the field of literature, you've got very famous poets and writers like Peter Balakian or William Saroyan, who's famous for writing the short story called The Armenian and the Armenian, with famous the story is mostly famous for the last two paragraphs, which states on the ability of the Armenian nation to survive even after the genocide. Apart from literature, there are also music, people in the music industry, like a famous rock band called System of a Down, which was famous for campaigning for the recognition of the Armenian genocide. The band has always been very active when it comes to the Armenian cause, and also has rallied with the ANCA, the Armenian Youth Federation, to support various resolutions for recognition of the Armenian genocide. Another famous musician of Armenian descent.
If you could just summarize the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just I will just finish off with the American. Of course, the Russian diaspora has also been active. Armenian diaspora is the largest diaspora in the world. I'll just finish in 2 minutes. Openly active, and it has helped Russia being one of the earliest countries to recognize the Armenian genocide in 1995, just 5 years after the establishment of the Russian Federation. India has one of the though not the largest, but one of the smallest diaspora in the world, Armenian diaspora in the world, but has established a lot of hasn't been involved quite in when it comes to recognition with with the cultural center, Armenian Cultural Center, and of course in 2019, the Jawaharlal University had the discussion on the Armenian genocide during the commemoration day of 24th April. The French diaspora also were very openly involved in the recognition process, which led to the recognition of the Armenian genocide. I would like to conclude by saying that the Armenian diaspora is one of the strongest diasporas in the world and has a strong connection with the Armenian cause and Armenian homeland. The active participation of the diaspora when it comes to issues of the homeland and history has been easily detected in the present scenario with the current conflict happening in Nagorno-Karabakh. When it comes to the Armenian genocide, there's ample support from the diaspora for the recognition process, even though they are small in number, like in India, where they help take strong efforts to educate individuals, or in larger countries like in larger diaspora numbers in France, Russia, and US, where they've actually led to the recognition of the genocide to a certain extent. The presence of foreign policy relations with Turkey of many countries does complicate the recognition process, but with the changing global scenario, there's a possibility for the recognition. Though there's still a long way to go for the recognition process, the diaspora, along with the homeland Armenians, are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I would like to ask Mr. Satyanarayan Tiwari, are you ready with your presentation? Still can't hear you, though you are unmuted. You are unmuted already, but
Yes, ma'am.
yeah. So
Yes, ready. Satyanarayan.
Okay, over to you, Satyanarayan.
बोलिए सत्यनारायण.
Mapping colonial stereotypes in select diasporic novels of the new millennium, a critical study. Over to you for this presentation.
सत्यनारायण बोलिए, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
आपके पास पेपर नहीं है अजय?
अनम्यूट तो हो गया सत्यनारायण।
It seems he is not able to unmute.
अरे
इनको बोलना पड़ेगा कि फिर से वो लॉग इन करें। अजय जी उनको बोलिए फिर से लॉग इन करके तब आए।
सत्यनारायण जी फिर से लॉग इन करिए, हमारी आवाज सुन रहे हैं आप?
So in the meantime, should we move to the next presenter?
उसमें जब वो पूछेगा कि जो है डू यू वांट माइक ऑनलाइन और यूज माइक फ्रॉम द कंप्यूटर, आई थिंक ही शुड क्लिक दैट इज व्हाई इट हैपेंस। ओके, yes Diksha?
So can we move to the next presenter before he is getting ready? Okay, so next we have Miss Satnam Kaur. Do we have Miss Satnam Kaur? Linking the global world, role of Indian diaspora on global culture. I guess we don't have Miss Satnam Kaur. Okay, Abdul Hamid Sheikh, diaspora and regional identity in the era of globalization. Mr. Abdul Hamid Sheikh, are you there?
He was there, I saw his...
Yes, he is there, yeah. Abdul Hamid?
Abdul Hamid, co-host.
Abdul Hamid, can we have your presentation? In the meantime, also the next presenter, Bijender Singh and Susmita Prija, please be ready. Do we have Mr. Bijender Singh and Susmita Prija?
I think Susmita is not there.
Yes, I am there, Bijender Singh.
So we can proceed with Mr. Bijender Singh's presentation.
Yes.
Mapping Migration and Cultural Crisis of Women, a study of fictional narratives. Over to you.
So am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, respected chair, organizers, colleagues and scholars, the topic of my presentation is Mapping Migration and Cultural Crisis of Women, a study of fictional narrative. So I start without taking much time. Migration is not one-dimensional but multidimensional. In ancient and Middle Ages, missionaries, scholars, armies, invaders, travelers migrated advertently from one place to other for various purposes. But in modern age, particularly in imperial age, people were transported forcibly but purposefully from Asia and Africa to other places. The purpose of transportation includes procurement of indentured labor from for different projects in the colonies, slave trade, and the partition exodus consequent to the colonial war and policies. In addition to it, in post-colonial era, people migrate for personal gains as well. Moon in this regard argues that migration is an expression of human aspiration for dignity, safety, and a better future. It is part of social fabric, part of our very makeup as human family. Following this marriage, people migrated and still migrate to other cities and foreign countries, mainly for better job opportunities, education, business, and for habitation better than their own. Undoubtedly, migration helps to fulfill some of the aspirations, if not all. In this race, women do not lag behind. They too migrate for the purposes. The migration within country, whereas does not affect their lives inversely, international migration indisputably does. For example, the human dignity always remains at stake in the other countries on axis of race, language, ethnicity, dress, and culture. In this matter, women are more prone than the male counterparts. Even if the host country treats all my immigrants indiscriminately, respecting their identities, culture, habits, the immigrants themselves face crisis. These people have been carrying the greatest burden of historical dislocation, and it is their misstep that lead to personal tragedy, as also trace the rocky path of larger national and international conflict. Cole argues. The cultural pulls and pushes let them not belong to their either culture. Regarding impact of culture, Vijay Tendulkar in Play Kannadan argues that people are brought up in a specific culture. To erase or to change all this overnight is just not possible. So culture adoption takes years, which is why the individual undergo this crisis. So for this, in this background, I prepared my paper, and I have for this chosen two works. So I read again. This sense of cultural crisis has been chosen by numerous writers in their writings, but the researchers have chosen only two novels to map the cultural crisis of the educated women who opted to migrate depicted in these writings. The first one, The Thousand Faces of Night by Geeta Hariharan, and the second one, The Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh. In The Thousand Faces of Night, the protagonist stays in America to get education, and in the second, The Shadow Lines, due to the job in phone services. For convenience, this research is divided into two sections. The first one is cultural crisis in Thousand Faces of Night, with three subsections, namely in America, in marriage, and out of marriage, or within the place as well, at the places as well. And the second one is cultural crisis in the shadow line. It also has three subsections: Ila in India and England, Thamma in India and Bangladesh, and May in Bangladesh and in India. Thamma, uh, Thamma, Ila, and May, all these are characters. So to analyze this crisis, cultural theory is used as a tool. So cultural crisis in Thousand Faces of Night in America for marriage. The crisis that Devi is a character there who has migrated from India to America to do MA, faces is of color. She grapples this choosing Dan, a black, as a friend to answer the white claustrophobia of all clean, all American campus, Geeta Hariharan writes. She feels awkward in the house she visits with Dan, where climate is almost India-like, but even then she feels an outsider. Her cultural mindset, suspended between Indian culture and foreign one, does not let her choose Dan as prospective husband, contrary to the fact that she plans to return to India after many marriage proposals there. That her mother mentions in every letter she writes. So the problem she faces is that the culture of country she lives in does not suit her, and she wonders at the relationships at her friends had with their mothers. They chatted about their boyfriends, they quarreled, they kissed, I love you, mom, as if she had seen an embrace between the lovers. And going back is a bigger risk. That means that there is cultural crisis, what she had seen there in America between the mother and daughters relationship, as I mentioned. And going back is a bigger risk. So this is the dilemma she suffers due to pulls of the two cultures. At Jacaranda Road, in marriage, she returns to India, undergoes all marriage meeting ordeals in typical Indian way, wearing sari, kumkum, and all other paraphernalia, which makes her Indian. Finally, she gets married to Mahesh, who proves only a visiting husband. She reveals that 2 or 3 brief encounter a month when bodies stuttered together in hazy, inarticulate lust, 2 weeks a month. When the shadowy stranger who casually stripped me of my name snaps his finger and demands a stimulating handmaiden. It is pertinent to mention here that her education left her unprepared for the vast yarning middle chapter of womanhood. Whereas in the America, you could presently plead your rights as an individual, here it is diagonally opposite. She mentions, I cooked all afternoon as if my life depended on it. Chop, boil, stir like silver eyelids. The onion skin slid onto the board one by one. The heat and smoke in the dingy old kitchen turned my entire body into a map of little streams. I felt my resentment, my aches and pain trickled away, leaving me quite still, resigned. Hariharan quotes. What she received here is the patriarchal lessons to be a woman, shadow of husband. She gets reduced to a woman puppet in his Mahesh hand. After all, husband is a man, so is father. The patriarchal culture, after being educated in America, becomes foreign, and foreign was foreign visibly. Mahesh tour and father-in-law's lesson on different topics, particularly marriage institution, in addition to being brought up listening mythical stories wherein women characters remained just the shadow of their husbands. The cultural inadaptability due to various reasons leaves her in a state of mind where she reveals her predicament by saying that I am neurotic because I am lazy woman who does not polish her floor every day, an aimless fool because I swallowed my hard-earned education, bitter and indigestible. When he tied the thali around my neck, a teasing which because I refuse him my body when his hand reaches out. Hariharan quotes. The cultural tug of war finally displaces her further and she finally flees with Gopal, elopes with Gopal, a musician. Devi has run away, Mahesh wrote to her mother Sita. But the cultural crisis which forced her to experiment with new situation, person, and place leads her to further experiment. Leaving Dan and America first and then Mahesh and the Indian city now land her in Delhi. Her constant cultural crisis leaves her in state of hollowness. She looked for bedraggled, submissive peahen every time she saw herself reflected in the mirror-studded button of Gopal Kurta. So, the love of Devi for Gopal was casual encounter as it was with Raga in his life, Gopal's life. He says a Raga is like a woman. What made woman woman was their unpredictability. So for Gopal, Devi and her love for him was just unpredictability, nothing else. For Gopal, Devi is just a body, which is why she feels Gopal's silk-covered thighs pressed against her leg. In this array of thought, movement, and her life, she introspects and she felt like an ignorant child imprisoned in woman's body. I, who have no husband, no lover, only this blissful anonymity in darkness. The diverse cultural atmosphere she lived in had made her suffer crisis. She thought my grandmother fed me fantasies, my father a secretly love, my mother sought me out with hope, and when disappointed, pushed me forward in the direction she chose. I have mimed the lessons they taught me, an obedient puppet whose string they pulled and jerked with their love. While Mahesh and father-in-law poured every lesson of patriarchy about husband as a sheltering tree, Gopal just treated her a body, which is why she confesses that I have run away from all my trials, my tails between the legs, from place and persons both. Lastly, she returns to mother's home, leaving Gopal as well. She is unfit in these situations with these people of culture, as Tendulkar argues. Then that means it is cultural crisis. That is why she leaves America and also boyfriend as well. Then she gets married and even she has to leave that marriage, institution, and she elopes. And lastly, she comes back to mother, even leaving the Gopal, sorry. So now I move to next novel, Cultural Crisis in Shadowline. Shadowline is about, the partition and about other issues as well, Roids as well. So Ila in England, India and England. Similar to Thousand Faces of Night, Amitav Ghosh in Shadowlines raises the issue of cultural crisis among migrants. He weaves the story around two families, Datta Chaudhary and Price family in London. Datta Chaudhary family has shifted to England for professional issues, purposes, and be friends with Price family, consequent to which both the families keeps visiting each other in England as well as in India. Since Ila from the Chaudhary family lives in London, she wants complete freedom from the culture. This is why she is quite frequent to bars and pubs. For the freedom is of utmost importance to her. She lives the life in India in same fashion she did in England. So visit to bars and pubs is quite normal for her even in India. But cultural law of land prevents her therefore. When she desires to dance at Grand Hotel in Kolkata, Robbie scolds her, you can do what you like in England. But here, there are certain things you can do. This bursts her in anger and she shouts, do you see now why I have chosen to live in London? Do you see? It is only because I want to be free, free of you, free of your bloody culture, free of all of you. Ila's lifestyle, being short-haired in tight trousers, Thamma doesn't like, which is why she calls her a greedy little slut. She is freedom freak, shares a flat with three others, one Irish computer scientist, a girl from Leicester who works with the Fourth International, and a Morosi young Ghanaian who is very active in anti-Nazi league. So even after being a freedom freak, she has to live there with three people. She has to share the room. It seems hypocrisy as she chooses freedom, but is in complete miss as she shares accommodation with other three. Further, her cosmopolitanism or cultural hybridity is a delusion as for her roommates, she is kind of gassed, a decoration almost. Her cultural marginalization further strengthens when she is harassed by racial antagonists in London. Nevertheless, Thamma realizes the fact, and she says, it was Ila's fault. It was her own fault. The Maya's fault. Maya, mother of Ila. Fault of that half-witted mother of hers. It was bound to happen. She has no right to be there. She doesn't belong there. So Thamma, the old grandmother of Ila, understands that she doesn't belong there. Thus, Thamma comment on the mishap with Ila verifies the cultural crisis the migrant undergo. Even in face of cultural reaction at both sides, Ila likes England and her culture. In this connection, Franz Fanon in The Wretched of Earth argues that colonization is not satisfied merely with holding a people in its grip and emptying the native's brain of all forms and content. By a kind of perverted logic, it turns to the past of oppressed people, distorts, disfigures, and destroys it. So, unquote. It is pertinent to mention here that Ila is not even leaving the English culture perfectly. Half-heartedly, she is in cultural dilemma. By heart, she is Indian, and by mind, she is a foreigner. With regard to chastity, she claims she is chaste. She is as chaste in her own way as any woman you will ever meet. So, freedom from Indian social codes, but trapped in conventions, makes her mix between both the culture, which further complexes her cultural crisis. Thamma in India and Bangladesh. Contrary to Ila, who prioritizes freedom on everything else, which is why sets herself free from her own idea of home, Thamma suffers the same cultural crisis in her country undivided because East Bangladesh now was, Bengal earlier, so therefore undivided. The nostalgia or revulsion from one's own culture, as is the case of Ila, has nothing to do with the geographical migration. In this connection, Ashcroft argues that diaspora doesn't mean just geographical dispersal. It also refers to the question of one's identity, memory, and home, which is produced by
Mr.
such
Bhupender, if you can
displacement.
summarize it.
Yeah. Just a minute. Thamma is equally fond of freedom.
Please, Bridget, now you conclude, not 2 minutes. I think you should not be doing injustice to others. Yeah?
Okay, sir. Just I conclude. So I jump to the conclusion. So I conclude from the discussion, we can conclude that migration is essential characteristic of human being. Human beings have been migrating from time immemorial. It had no problem before acculturation of human beings, but now it has. Due to various reasons, it is intended or forced. In both the cases, human beings are at loss, women in particular. Thus, migration, contrary to other blessings, robs a person of her the cultural identity. Consequently, neither one gets accepted in the foreign culture, nor one is able to associate with her own culture. In turn, one's own culture also rejects the one. In this delusion, one suffers cultural crisis throughout life. Due to this crisis, one remains in search for a cultural identity, and every effort results in nothingness, as it is visible in case of Devi. No place or its culture adopts such persons, and this leads further migration. The cultural crisis results in death, disease, dilemma, psychological and compatibility problems. Thus, study reveals through the chosen text the way women migrants suffer cultural crisis. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijender. Can we move to the next presenter? Sir Abdul Hamid.
Hello.
Satyanarayan.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Satyanarayan.
So, sir, should we start with Satyanarayan's presentation?
Yes, I think you stipulate the time, I think, because people are now digressing the time. I think that's not, that's
I
some.
think we are left with two more presentations. So we'll quickly start with Satyanarayan Tiwari and Dr. Ajay K. Chaube, Mapping Colonial Stereotypes in Select Diasporic Novels of the New Millennium, a Critical Study. And Satyanarayan, please be
okay, ma'am.
Careful about the time. You cannot take the entire time here.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, ma'am. I will try my best to cover all the important points in the given time.
Yes, go ahead, Satyanarayan.
So, the present paper seeks to explore the discourse of colonial stereotypes in two seminal Indian diasporic novels. The first is Kiran Desai's Inheritance of Loss, and the second is Arvind Adiga's The White Tiger. So, I begins with the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in 2001. And the consequences of these events also propelled the literary world, for the reason that the stereotypical images of non-Westerners, particularly Muslims, as the other, refurbished in academic edifices, and once again, Edward Said's concept of Orientalism regained a new breeding ground. So, 19 years after this incident, the outrageous death of George Floyd in America revamped the colonial trauma of the Afro-African American in the US, igniting criticism and condemnation from all across the globe. As Isaac Zebali writes, that white supremacy flows through this country's DNA. So this leads us to believe that the colonial strain and the white supremacy of the West and colonial stereotypical images of the non-Westerner as other are still functioning in different forms and manifestation. Some of them are military Orientalism, American Orientalism, internal Orientalism, as Kumar Malreddy cites in his article. So another form of representation similar to internal Orientalism is also being enacted where non-white, rather the Western educated elite of non-European countries who deterritorialized their land for some personal reason and settled in European countries are also stereotyping their own people, place, culture, and race through their own frame of mind. But before going to explore the re-innovation of colonial stereotypes, a succinct overview of the word stereotype is quintessential. So the stereotype words, as the Oxford English Dictionary define, It is a fixed idea or image that many people have of a particular type of person or thing. In the same way, Longman Dictionary define it as the stereotypes are often unfair or untrue. And Stegner says that they are problematic because they are negative, inaccurate, and unfair. So we can say that stereotype is a set idea about someone, be his culture, place, position, race, gender, or caste. Similarly, the term colonial stereotypes refers to an organism of representation in the colonial period used by the colonizers to deliberately impose their superiority and to justify their act of colonization. So, overtly and covertly, colonial stereotypes functioning under the spell of colonial discourse and having a negative undertone was a statism. Edward Said's 1978 book Orientalism effectively and systematically started this debate based on the dichotomy of the East and the West. The concept of re-Orientalism in Indian literature is also one such form of Orientalism wherein the Indian diasporic writers are reconstructing, deploying their own Orientalistic conception about their own homeland. There is a general acquiescence in their view that the 21st century India is devoid of progress, electricity, infrastructure, peace, harmony, and so on. And despite the fact that Indian English literature fiction in particular has produced heterogenesis of thoughts and issues, uh, there is a surge of Indian writers, as Joseph says in his article, who are trying to sell the great Indian exotica to white people, and they guess that what the foreigners love are tradition, poverty, wedding scenes, etc. Aparna Mahanta declares that Midnight Children was only the latest in a whole series of fiction catering to the Western desire to see India as a strange, sensual, fantastical land of other. In the same way, Kiran Desai's Inheritance of Loss and Arvind Adiga's White Tiger also orientalizes India through an inauthentic and spurious depiction and concurrently restore colonial pattern. The novel Inheritance of Loss severely attacked for presenting a twisted delineations of Kalingpuk town in the district of Darjeeling, where the novel is set, and for manipulating details of Gorkhaland movement. Many critics, including local people from the town, wrote, interviewed, and argued about the unusual descriptions made by Kiran Desai in the novel. Like Randeep Ramesh says that Indian people of Nepali descent are projected in the books as petty criminals. Another Anmol Prasad says that Desai shows her depressing distaste for Kalingpuk, and even Desai's aunt, a local practitioner in the medical practitioner in the town, says that the book contains many insensitive things. Similarly, Adiga's White Tiger is also pungent, bitter, and more and radical. Has radical approach towards India, as like Amitabh Kumar says that the novelist seems to know next to nothing about either the love or the despair of the people he writes about. And Amardeep Singh writes about Adigas that I have been able to, I haven't been able to shake the sense that the White Tiger, despite its topicality and its readability, is something fundamentally fake. Uh, Nevertheless, judging the literary merit of any text based on published reviews and public opinions is iniquitous. So, therefore, a proper textual illustrations of the both the novels will be helpful to substantiate the point. The Kiran Desai from the very first novel has been accused for exoticizing India and for reinforcing Oriental image of India. The novel grapples issues of illegal immigrations in America through the story of Biju, political and social turmoil, violence, through the story of Gyan, and class privilege and master-slave relationship through the story of Cook. And
Satyam,
all
if you
the
could
characters.
just come to the main argument of your paper.
Okay, ma'am. Uh, so uh, the main argument of the this paper is that uh, the novel Inheritance of Losses based on the Gorkhaland movement, but neither Desai nor the characters in the novel except Gyan imbibe it as a serious concern in the novel. And it seems that novelist's major concern is not to render the reality of the campaign, but to capture the essence of India. And Adiga's White Tiger is also a story of an uneducated person named Balram Halwai who does not know either the local language of Bangalore or local language of Bangalore or English, but wishes to tell the truth of the city to a Chinese premier. So Adiga's novel is nothing but a claimed truth and a prolongation of stereotypical images of India. As he says in the novel, India without drinking water, electricity, sewage system, public transportation. In the novel, he says that, Balram escaped from the eastern India of darkness to the western India of light, may be envisaged as a commemoration of Western values and culture. So, and tracing the colonial discourses, Adiga's novel also moves on the binary of East-West, good-bad, civilized, uncivilized. So, in the novel, Adiga spares no effort to proffer his unfavorable ideas about India for the Western readers to lap up. So, we can conclude that the story of poverty, corruption, communalism, supremacy, discrimination that was dealt with by Mulkraz Anand in the 1930s with the publication of Untouchable, which Rohinton Mistries and Arundhati Rai narrated in a fine balance, and The God of Small Things, respectively, is still recounting by contemporary Indian English writers like Kiran Desai and Arvind Adigas and many more. The unveiling of such stories by restoring the colonial stereotypical image without the empirical knowledge of the people and places are tantamount to the concept of Orientalism, which, as Said says, is making a statement about the Orient, authorizing views of Orient, and describing it, and above all, ruling over it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Satyanarayan. Moving on to the last presentation. Can we have now Abdul Hamid Sheikh, Diaspora and Regional Identity in the Era of Globalization? Abdul Hamid?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes. Am I audible?
Presentation. Yes, we are.
Yes. Thanks. Sir, my topic of presentation, Diaspora and Regional Identity in the Era of Globalization. Globalization does not exist as a phenomenon, but as a conceptual umbrella term for transforming dynamics of social, cultural, economic, and political relations between different combinations of national, sub-multinational, and transnational actors and institutions that constitute multiple inter, and trans-border flows and movements. The process of globalization includes massive migrations and relocations, thus challenging the traditional concept of nation state and opening up of borders and boundaries. The transnational movement of goods, information, and bodies necessitated to consider the effects of relocation, displacement, and the transition between cultures and how these things affect the construction of identity. The main psychological consequence of globalization is that it results in transformations in identity. People think about themselves in relation to the social environment. The globalization developed a bicultural identity in which part of the identity is rooted in local culture, while another part stems from an awareness of relation to the global culture. The dialectic of globalization and localization makes the phenomena of identity more complex. The resistance and acceptance of global ideology leads to a more unified world culture, but at the same time, it also produces a fragmented cultural hybridity of a local culture. Globalization deterritorializes in the sense that people and societies are no longer restricted to geographical or physical locations. The borders of countries and distinction of cultures become blurred, open-ended, unstable, contested, and reconfigured. Identity, the ethnic, national, and religious identities are produced, reproduced, and assembled by various cultural, communicative, technological means. Identity is constantly negotiated to serve political ends. The diasporic community is characterized by a sense of living in one place while simultaneously remembering and desiring for another place because of the multiplicity of relations between diaspora communities and their homeland in a binary context, and also due to ongoing lateral relations among diaspora communities located in different sites within national states and in different states. Open borders, mobile job markets, international division of labor, and increased accessibility of modern means of transportation make possible ongoing communication and contact of immigrants with their countries of origin. Identity is constantly in flux and cannot be isolated as a permanent construction. Cultural identities are never static, rather they constantly change. Without limitations of spatial boundaries, the local communities simultaneously undergo transformations of themselves to respond to and engage in transnationalism, negotiating, reconstructing, and reinventing their other subjectivities. Diasporas deconstruct the boundaries of nation state, reconstructing a non-Western model of identity formation. The diasporic in-betweenness moves beyond the binary construction of colonizer and colonizer, center and periphery, serving as a model of resisting the hegemony of Western modernization. Identification is a process never completed and logged in contingency. While not denying that identity has a past, it is always in the process of becoming rather than being. Accordingly, it is constantly changing and transforming within the historical, social, cultural developments and practices, such as globalization, modernity, post-colonization, and new innovations in technology. An individual is socio-historical and socio-cultural product, and identity is not biologically pre-given to a person. Instead, he or she occupies it. And more importantly, this occupation may include different and multiple identities at different points of time and settings. Diaspora's sense of identity is not fixed, but rather may form in different contexts. They are situationally determined. While discussing Caribbean diasporic identity and the Pan-African political movement early in the century, Stout Hall argues that cultural identity has become a matter of becoming as well as being, rather than being fixed by an essentialized. Ma'am? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, but please
While
summarize.
discussing Caribbean diaspora,
Please summarize.
yes, ma'am. I'm going. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to conclude. While discussing Caribbean diasporic identity and the Pan-African political movement early in the century, Stout Hall argues that cultural identity has become a matter of becoming as well as being. Rather than being fixed by an essentialized cultural root, identity is instead fluid, constantly subject to continuous play of history, power, and discourse. Thus, diasporic identities are those which are constantly producing, reproducing themselves anew through transformation and difference. Thanks, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, sir, for your comments.
So, do you have some question answer also? Hello.
I'm just seeing the chat box. There is one question for Jason. So Badshah Sarkar is asking Jason. Jason, thanks for your presentation. Do you think that the recognition of genocide may hamper diaspora's assimilation to their destination country?
Do I answer it, or sir?
Jason, you can be brief and you can answer. I think that will be.
Thank you for the question. When you say that, do you think the recognition of genocide may hamper the diaspora assimilation? I don't think so. I think the recognition of genocide, though being one of the most important aspects of the identity of the Armenian diaspora, is not the only identity when it comes to the diaspora's connection to the destination country also. So I'm a very simple and brief answer.
Thank you so much. Great. Anyone else has a question?
So I can't see any other question here.
Fantastic. Actually, I think it has been a very absorbing session, which went on for 3 hours exactly. If we see, it's 22 hours in India. So we had, of course, but there's 7 presentations. I think I've listed 7.
Yes.
Might be because there were some. So we can divide actually, these presentations into 2 groups. One group was exactly, taking a diasporic analysis of the people, and you can begin with on scarcity of Nobel Prize in Latin America, and then second, the making of the Canadian dreams, and the third was the Armenian diaspora. I think they can be clubbed together, and then there were actually presentations which were more or less content analysis, and the last presentation was a theoretical and conceptual presentation. So we have 3 shades, and that's where I think I should congratulate the organizers, the 3 organizers, MFA, GRFDT, and CSAN. They have lived to the expectation of the diaspora studies, because we all know that as students of diaspora studies and migration, we know that still this whole discipline is trying to emerge as an independent discipline. It has to acquire an independent discipline, and that's where we see that it acquires interdisciplinarity and also multidisciplinarity approach as far as its epistemology is concerned. However, we can also see that now there are certain concepts which are germane, which are their original concepts within the diasporic studies. As we all know, the diaspora itself has become, and it has indulged its own conceptual territory. And now the definition has also started from the dias and spirine, from a particular area, and how victimization was one of the most important characteristic of diaspora and migration. But now it is acquired, for example, homeland, acquired homeland, victimhood, displacement, and then we have nursing the hope, the homeland and the abroad relationship. I think these are very, very important concepts within the diasporic and migratory studies. Also, contribution towards the homeland and nursing the homeland, that one day we will return there. However, we have to differentiate between group mobility and individual mobility. If we really are talking about diaspora, we have to think of that how individual mobility gradually acquires a shape of diaspora, because we cannot say one individual living somewhere and acquires the diaspora. We were talking about communities. That is one of the most important aspects. Also, we have to see representatives of the diasporic communities. And these representatives of the diasporic communities, they have started producing knowledge. And this knowledge is now becoming part of diaspora studies, where we see the 4 presentations which have come, they have come from the content analysis of this knowledge production. But here, if we see the concepts which have been borrowed in diaspora studies, a culture is one of the most important adopted concept from the different disciplines. Society. Then we also have generation conflict or cultural crisis, identity, colonialism. All these have been borrowed concepts in the discipline of diaspora and migration, which are trying to assume. But I want to argue that whenever people want to analyze as far as culture is concerned, or if you are trying to, even in globalization, identity formation and other things, I think we have to look into the Western Western dichotomy syndrome which they have, because Western epistemic syndrome always try to analyze the reality in the binaries: tradition and modern, rural, urban, or old and new. They always have binaries, but we have seen that how the production of knowledge has grown, that there is not, and not only binaries, but there are different a creation. And therefore, this Western epistemic syndrome with the binaries, it also has another aspect, and that is displacement. Western knowledge system always thinks that once the modernity comes, tradition will be wiped out. And that's where I think when we start talking about globalization, I think the presenters have brought out hybridization. It's not necessary that there is a displacement syndrome. There is always a creation. And that's where I think this whole theories of brain drain and brain gain, they are, very well summarizing that the culture or knowledge production cannot be only one-sided affair, and diaspora can never be treated only at one end. And that's where transnationalism, how the realities are constituted in the to and fro motion of the individuals, that acquire a very important shape. And therefore the first presenter, when they were talking about that there is dearth of Nobel in their country, but you see that their countries are always identified with, and that's where I think colonialism and imperialism acquires a very, very important uh, uh, in conceptual category within the diasporic studies, because we have many theories in sociology, but I would always argue to look into one person. And whenever we are talking about biography, I am reminded of C. Wright Mills. And C. Wright Mills, in his book Sociological Imagination, talks about three coordinates of construction of social reality. Most of the literary personalities, if they really want, literature person or even diaspora person, if they want to make their study counted as a social scientific study, because we are dealing interdisciplinarity. I think socials, if they really want their production of knowledge to be counted as social scientific in nature, I think they should look into sociological imagination of C. Wright Mills, who talks about that there are three coordinates of reality. One is biography, another is history, and third is their interaction in society. So biography, history, and society are three coordinates on the basis of which social sciences are constituted. And I think you can, of course, take leaf also from P. Bourdieu's cultural capital. I think these all brain drain and brain drain. The cultural capital, and that's where I think the presenters were talking about that how lack of democracy has forced certain individuals. And in India, we have been talking about that how lack of opportunity have forced the IT professionals abroad. So this internal dynamics has to be evaluated on the basis of biography. And C. Wright Mills and Bourdieu both are talking about internal role differentiation. So I think the policy formulation, the sociological interactions, they have different two domains in which we have to analyze, and therefore there can be number of conceptual categories which can be bring. And I think we can evolve diaspora and migration studies, and we can strengthen them as the organizers are trying to evolve a new arena. And I congratulate, therefore, at this organization of Conference on Migration, Diaspora, and Sustainable Development. And I think organizers have done wonderful, imaginatory, and of course, in this hours of trauma, we remember millions of people who have really suffered. We also give our condolences to the families who have suffered, and we stand with them, those who are suffering and those who have really suffered trauma. Thank you so much, organizers.
Sir, thank you so much. It is so nice always and get, the very profound thinking from you. Thank you all the, participant presenters, and I have no words. Almost it is late night in India and early morning for Mexico and other places. And thank you, Professor Vivek Kumar, and thank you, Diksha, for hosting, and all the participants. Please send your paper after 1 month or so, so that will have publication. And Professor Vivek Kumar is a poet and also very inspiring professor. Worked on many area of many issues which are important for the people who are struggling, and who is the voice for many marginalized people. Thank you, Professor, for being with us.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.